Right, so I like to say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shah, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rakah HaKadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, and salutations to you brothers out there that's doing this work in truth and sincerity. This is the book of Revelations, chapter 9, verse 15. It says, "And the four angels were loose, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. And I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horsemen were as the heads of lions, and out their mouth issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was the third part of man killed by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone which issue out of her mouth." Right. So the 200,000, do that represents all nuclear weapons? And the answer to that is no. That does not represent all nuclear weapons. You have nuclear weapons, you have ballistic missiles, you have cruise missiles, you have a lot of um, nuclear weapons, atomic bombs, and missiles, right? So the 200,000 does not only represent thermonuclear missiles, right? It represents different kind of missiles. So I'm gonna go into a little bit of these um, list of nuclear weapons, and then I'm gonna get some ballistic missiles and other missiles to go along with that, right? So let's start off with the United States. It says U.S. nuclear weapons of all types. So listen to this. It says U.S. nuclear weapons of all types, bombs, warheads, shells, and others. So nuclear weapons are bombs, warheads, shells, and others, are numbered in the same sequence, starting with Mark 1 and, as of March 2006, ending with the W91, which was canceled prior to introduction into service. All designs which were formerly intended to be weapons at some point received a number designation. Pure test units which were experiments and not intended to be weapons are not numbered in this sequence. Early weapons were very large and could only be used as free fall bombs. These were known by mark designators like the Mark IV, which was a development of the Fat Man weapon. As weapons became more sophisticated, they also became much smaller and lighter, allowing them to be used in many roles. At this time, the weapons began to receive designations based on their role. Bombs were given the prefix B, while the same warheads used in other roles, like missiles, would normally be prefixed W. For instance, the W-53 warhead was also used as the basis for the B-53 nuclear bomb. Such such examples share the same sequence number, right? It says in other cases, when the modifications are more significant, variants are assigned their own numbers. An example is the B-61 nuclear bomb, which was the present design for the W-80, W-81, and the W-84. There are also examples of out-of-sequence numbering and other prefixes used in special occasions. So let's go down here. So you got bombs designated with Mark MK numbers until 1968, and with B bombers after that. Test experimental bombs designated with TX Mark 1 Little Boy gun type uranium weapon used against Hiroshima, 1318 kilotons, 1945 to 1950. Mark II, and then Mark III, Mark IV, Mark V. It goes into different nuclear weapons, right? Nuclear weapons could represent bombs. It could represent even the warheads, right? So let's get into another list. Salakia. Ah, let's get into another list. Right. So okay, these are other missile lists. So below is a list of missiles sorted alphabetically by name. So these are all anti-missiles, land attack missiles, shoulder launch missiles, surface to air missiles, surface to surface missiles, wire guided missiles, air launched cruise missiles, ground launch cruise missiles, submarine launch cruise missiles, tactical ballistic missiles, short range ballistic missiles, theater ballistic missiles, medium range ballistic missiles, intermediate range ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, lists of ICBMs, comparison of ICBMs, submarine launch ballistic missiles, air launch ballistic missiles. So all the the uh the Salakia. The 200,000 missiles do not represent all nuclear missiles. So also, if you scroll down, it gives you missiles by name, right? If you want to be specific at naming any other missiles, as you can see, it's a hell of a lot of missiles, right? It's a hell of a lot of missiles, man, right? And you have I remember on the Iron Man, right? When Iron Man tested out the Jericho missiles, what came out of the warheads of what came out of the Jericho missiles, other missiles from the warheads, right? So again, the 200,000 um doesn't represent all thermonuclear missiles. They also represents just regular missiles as well, right? Because missiles, when you go into the book of Joel, the second chapter, it tells you that a fire should burn behind them. There should be windows, there should be missiles going over the walls, going inside of the buildings, right? It's going to be a lot of missiles that goes up, right? All of them aren't going to just be thermonuclear missiles, right? A lot of them will, but a lot of them will be missiles coming out of those thermonuclear missiles. So let's go into the Soviet Union, right? And I'm gonna prove that um there will be a lot of thermonuclear missiles, but a lot of them will be also just ballistic missiles and things like that. So it says at the peak of its arsenal in 1988, Russia possessed around 45,000 nuclear weapons in its stockpile, roughly 13,000 more than the United States arsenal, the second largest in the world, which peaked in 1966. So who the hell America's a great nation, but who the hell says that America is still in power? America has been losing power really since 1966. Uh, Pretty much, power comes into different forms. Power can come into currency wise, or power can come into military, soldiers, or weaponry, right? So whoever have the biggest and most dangerous weapons are powerful. But economically wise, whoever have the most economic and currency that is current is powerful in that type of situation, because in order to make nuclear missiles, you got to have money and you got to pay people like scientists to make those things. But if you have a nation whose currency or influence over the world is greater than another nation, then they could put what you would call um, sanctions on a nation to um, diminish their um, diminish them economically, right? So where they don't have the money to make those sort of weapons. So let's bring that back. At the peak of its arsenal in 1988, Russia possessed around 45,000 nuclear missiles in its stockpile. It says roughly 13,000 more than the United States arsenal, the second largest in the world, which peaked. Salaki, let me fix this. Right, which peaked in 1966. So um, this is a test, Joe 1, where they tested one of the missiles, torpedoes, 58 torpedoes with 10 kilotons RDS-9 warheads, 73 torpedoes with 20 kilotons, VA-111 Shekvel with 150 kilotons, and then it goes into the bombs, right? And then, like I said, if you want to do the research, you want to look these things up, then be my guest, right? So you can go into the United Kingdom. It will tell you how many missiles they have: France, China, India, Israel, Pakistan, North Korea, South Korea. And or you could just see all, plain and simple. But other than that, again, referring back to the book of Revelation, chapter 9, verse 16, where it talks about the 200,000, right? It does not represent all thermonuclear missiles, right? It's gonna be many missiles, man, from ballistic missiles um to bombs to bombers to just different missiles. Ultimately, if you go back to that list, you know it gives you different names of those type of missiles, right? But let's go ahead and get into this Joel, right? That sucks. There we go. So again, you can see all cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and then it gives you names of missiles. So if you want to get into that, you can get into that. So Joel chapter 2 and verse 3, it says, "A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth." Now, what if that fire, um, what is that fire that devoureth before them, and behind them the flame that burneth? Is going to be missiles. When the people are running, when you see those missiles go up in the air, people are going to begin to run. People aren't going to stay right there and just look at the missiles and say, "Wow." These people are gonna they're gonna be shot. They're not gonna know what to do. They're gonna have their faces are gonna be turned into blackness, and they're gonna try to run. They're gonna be so scared and and confused that they're just gonna run all over the place. And while they're running, you're gonna have a missile that comes down, multiple missiles that comes down. The back of them is gonna break apart. Then after the back breaks apart, the front of it comes loose, and then more missiles scatter throughout the lands, right? So it says, "A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them." So what can make a land desolate? What can possibly make a land desolate? Thermonuclear missiles. If a thermonuclear missile was to go up this moment and it will hit, right? A thermonuclear wouldn't actually hit the ground. A thermonuclear don't hit the ground. What it does, and I'm talking about a thermonuclear missile. I'm not talking about any anti-ship missiles or land attack missiles or anything like that. I'm just talking about thermonuclear missile. If a thermonuclear missile goes up and as it comes down, before it hits the ground, there's a magnetic or some type of magnetic or electricity that merge with the atom, and once it does that, it triggers the explosion of the thermonuclear missile, right? And that's before it hits the ground. So once that go out, what goes out first is that wave. Poof. That wave goes out, destroy a lot of shit, right? Then you have the smoke that merges right along with the fire, and that what turns everything into crisp, and nothing is left. There's not gonna be the inner structures of a building left. There's not gonna be cars on the streets looking like Constantine or I Am Legend or anything like that. It's gonna completely wipe that shit out. It's gonna melt. It's gonna the elements that are used to build a building, whether if it's copper, metal, steel, iron, aluminum, it's gonna melt that shit away. It's gonna wipe it out. That's the beautiful thing about the Most High preparing nuclear missiles, is that a nuclear missile is devastating power. That's why they call it weapons of mass destruction. It says, a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. So nothing's going to escape them. It doesn't matter if you're in the building. It doesn't matter if you're on a mountain. It doesn't matter if you are hiding in your house, right? You're not going to escape them. Now, the scriptures talk about a third part of men that shall be destroyed. But you're going to have, and in those times, you're still going to have people that's hiding, like the elite banker families, because the scriptures prophesied about the elect pulling them out of the holes of the rocks and out of the ground, right? Because when people hearing all that confused noise in the middle of the night, and there are so many videos that show you that when people hearing all this confused noise, what they're hearing is them building cities underground. They're literally building cities underground to escape thermonuclear fire, right? Because this is what's approaching. If you look at the conflict between these nations, from North Korea, South Korea, China, Iran, Russia, Turkey, Afghanistan, Egypt, the U.S., you see war is approaching, right? And once one missile goes up, they all going up, right? So it says, they shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. And you will see that, man. If you ever watch a movie where somebody shot a missile off, the missile literally looked like it's being guided. This shit is crazy. The technology is crazy, man. But it looks like it's being guided, and it'll go over all type of things, man. Any obstacles in its way, it'll go around a building. A heat seeker missile can literally, if a helicopter was flying, right? If a helicopter was flying between buildings or whatever, a heat seeker missile will literally follow it. That's why it's a heat seeker missile, because it will follow that heat radiation, that heat radiating off of the propellers of that helicopter, right? So it says, they shall run like mighty men, they shall climb the wall like men of war, and they shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another. And this is how you know it's not talking about an army. It's not talking about a people of armies, because the people of armies don't make shit desolate. When if you go back in the ancient times, anytime a nation went to conquer another nation and they set that shit ablaze, there was still the structure of that nation. That's why archaeologists and historians and things like that are able to give us that type of information, because they can go back to those lands and look at the structures that are still there. So this is not talking about people. This is talking about a land that is laid desolate, right, by fire. So it says, they shall run, Salakia, verse 8, neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded, right? Because they have what you would call convictional guided missiles, which are anti-ballistic missiles. So here you can see the different anti-ballistic missiles from air to air missiles, air to surface missiles, anti-radiation missiles, anti-ballistic missiles, anti-satellite missiles, and anti-ship missiles. Now, the scriptures tell you that they shall not be wounded, which means their anti-defense missiles aren't going to work. And the reason why they're not going to work is because these missiles are now being upgraded to where they can literally dodge another missile. If you do the research, which I'm not about to do it, but you could do the research, even Russia created a missile that can maneuver from anti-missiles. That's why they're not going to be stopped, right? They shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb up upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and their stars shall withdraw their shining. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, for he is strong that executed his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible, and who can abide? And who can abide in it? So death and destruction is coming, man. Death and destruction is coming, right? Them again. The 200,000 aren't all thermonuclear missiles, right? There's all sorts of missiles and bombs and things that's going to annihilate America, right? So real quick, bear with me for a minute here. I'm gonna grab this in Psalms 64:7, right? So it says, the Most High shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded. Right? This is Psalms chapter 7, verse 12. It says, if he turn not, he will whet his sword. He hath bent his bow and made it ready. He have also prepared for him the instruments of death. He ordaineth his arrows against the prosecutors. Now, let's take a picture of arrows, right? Now, if you go into the ancient times, not all arrows was made the same. You had some arrows that was made with the straight hook looking thing, right? Some arrows that was made with that looked like a fishing hook, and they was made that way because once they go in, pulling them out will be a pain in the ass. More likely, once you pull them out, you're gonna bleed to death or your wound is gonna become infected, right? So different arrows were made differently even in the ancient times. So it says, he had prepared for him the instruments of death. He ordained his arrows against the prosecutors. So he had ordained his arrows against the prosecutors, right? Let me get this. This is the book of Psalms chapter 11 verse 6. It says, upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire and brimstone, and in horrible tempest this shall be the portion of their cup. So there you go. No different than Sodom and Gomorrah. The Lord is going to rain, like the Lord rained fire and brimstone during the time of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Lord is going to rain what? Missiles upon America, right? But other than that, that's all I wanted to get there. You know, again, all missiles, all the missiles are not all thermonuclear missiles, right? There's different missiles that's going to destroy America, right? So other than that, hey, shit, you have devastating Satan 1, Satan 2, the Poseidon. You know, there's different missiles that Russia have. I don't know their specific names, but again, you know, you can do the research. You can go onto them. You know, it's nothing for you to get, you know, specific names on different weapons from, you know, France, Iran, North Korea, South Korea, Russia, China. You know, you can just go into them. Other than that, I'm going to say Barak Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Bahashemra Kahagadash, Shabons, the apostles, and elders of GMS, Lord willing. This was an edifying video for you brothers out there. Let's doing this work in true sincerity. But I like to say, Shalom.
Мы наблюдали это с расстояния 70 километров. Какое-то количество людей находилось ближе. Одного солдата, находившегося в канаве, засыпало песком, и один солдат погиб. В одном из близлежащих сел население было все выведено из зданий.
Взрыв выглядел из города Курчатова, центра Семипалатинского полигона. Ослепительная вспышка и ударная волна сотрясли город. В домах вылетели все стекла. Это кадры из фильма, который был снят специально для показа руководству страны. Текст, естественно, читал Левитан.
Вернемся в городок полигона. Сейчас и сюда подойдет ударная волна. Вы видите группу людей, стоящих на дороге? Находясь далеко от места взрыва, они чувствуют себя спокойно. Но за это благодушие им придется поплатиться.